It's a bright November morning in the Solomon Sea. Aboard the Japanese heavy cruiser, Chokai, Vice Admiral Gunichi Mikawa surveys his regrouping fleet with confidence. The destroyers glide ahead in formation, flanked by cruisers on either side. On the port side, Captain Masao Sawa, aboard the Kinugasa, watches the horizon, unaware of the lurking threat. High above, American aircraft from Henderson Field and the USS Enterprise have already spotted their prey, diving into position for a deadly strike. It is 2 a.m., November 14th, 1942. The chaotic First Naval Battle of Guadalcanal had just ended. The Japanese battleship Kirishima and light cruiser Nagara withdrew early, taking most of the surviving destroyers with them. The battleship He, severely damaged and on fire, struggled to stay afloat as it circled Savo Island, accompanied by several escorting destroyers. The He continued to limp north, but was relentlessly attacked by US planes from Henderson Field and the carrier Enterprise. By the afternoon of November 13th, the battleship was abandoned and sank, marking the first loss of a Japanese battleship in the war. Admiral Abe's initial mission to bombard Henderson Field had been stopped. The Americans also suffered heavy losses. 4 destroyers were sunk or abandoned, and 2 light cruisers were scuttled and sunk after severe damage. Some ships were towed to safety, but others sank later in the day. 2 of their admirals, Daniel Callahan and Norman Scott, had been killed during the battle. The torpedo planes and their escorts returned safely to Henderson Field, with no losses among the US aircraft. Task Force 16, with the USS Enterprise, remained south of Guadalcanal. The carrier prepared for further action, with aircraft taking off for reconnaissance missions as the situation in the Solomons remained uncertain. Although Admiral Abe failed to effectively bombard Henderson Field and his loss of a battleship, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto still considered deploying the 38th Division to Guadalcanal crucial for Japan's victory. He issued orders for Vice Admiral Kondo's strike force, stationed at Ontong Java Atoll, approximately 500 miles east of Rabaul, to advance towards Guadalcanal. Kondo escorted a Japanese troop convoy consisting of transport ships, which was scheduled to arrive at sunset on the 14th. Along the way, he assimilated 6 ships from Abe's force. Meanwhile, Vice Admiral Gunichi Mikawa's Outer South Seas force, among them the heavy cruisers Chokai, Kinugasa, Maya, and Suzuya, were also en route to participate in a second night bombardment of Henderson Field, setting sail from the Shortlands on an eastern course. Enterprise remained south of Guadalcanal in search of Japanese carriers, but found none, as the converted carrier Junyo was too far north to be detected or to enter the fray. Despite the opportunity to reinforce Henderson, Rear Admiral Thomas Kincaid, even in this critical situation, refused to move the carrier closer to the battle. Task Force 64, under Rear Admiral Willis August Ching Lee, comprising 2 battleships and 4 destroyers, was positioned too far away to intercept Mikawa's forces, leaving Guadalcanal vulnerable to a night bombardment. The Rear Admiral had, however, received orders to reinforce Guadalcanal at a last-ditch effort to stop the Japanese. At midnight on the 15th, Mikawa's force arrived just north of Savo Island. For just 30 minutes, the 4 cruisers unleashed hundreds of shells on Henderson Airfield. Chokai fired 381 rounds, Maya 485, and Suzuya 504, each armed with 10 8-inch guns and utilizing APHE shells. The destroyers Mochizuki and Amagiri aided the bombardment. Although they shot many shells, only 10 aircraft were destroyed and no vital infrastructure was damaged. Afterwards, they retreated toward the Shortlands at dawn. On the morning of November 14th, the two Japanese forces regrouped at 0800. The destroyers sailed in a horizontal line ahead, while the cruisers sailed in two columns. On the port side, Kinugasa, Chokai, and Isuzu sailed, and on starboard, Suzuya, Maya, and Teniru. Unbeknownst to them, aircraft from Air Group CVG-10 aboard Enterprise, part of Task Force 16, had departed earlier that morning. But as the sun had illuminated the sea, aircraft from Guadalcanal also embarked on a hunt for the ships that bombarded their airfield that night. In total, 7 Grumman F-4F fighters, 7 SBD Dauntless dive bombers, and 6 TBF Avengers prowled the skies, looking for the retreating Japanese vessels. It is unsure at what time, but before 8 a.m., the aircraft noticed the ships. They immediately attacked, launching their torpedoes and 500-pound bombs. At least one torpedo hit Kinugasa on its port side, and 2 or 3 more on its starboard side. The attack happened within minutes as the aircraft retreated back to Henderson Airfield. Heavily damaged, Kinugasa began listing and leaking oil. At 8:50 a.m., 2 U.S. scout planes from the Enterprise sighted the Japanese warships from low altitude. The Japanese noticed the planes as well and opened fire. They climbed in circles, followed by bursts of long-range anti-aircraft fire. For the next hour, the planes stayed high, reporting every move of the task group and positioning for an attack. During this period, it became clear that the ships were moving slower than expected, revealing that one of the heavy cruisers was trailing a wide oil slick and listing to starboard. This was the Kinugasa, commanded by Captain Masao Sawa. At 9:15, the scouting planes gathered enough data to send a contact report. They reported sighting 9 enemy ships a few miles south of an island group, about 270 miles northwest of the fleet. 6 minutes later, the pilot reported favorable weather for dive bombing, and 15 minutes later, he identified the enemy force as consisting of 2 battleships, 2 cruisers, 1 possible converted carrier, and 4 destroyers. However, due to distance, cloud cover, and enemy fire, the force was misidentified. The group actually consisted of 4 heavy cruisers and 2 light cruisers. Once all reports were acknowledged by the fleet, the decision was made to target the damaged cruiser, with most of the Japanese aircraft focused on protecting their transports elsewhere. The cruisers were left without aerial support. At 10:15, the 2 dive bombers launched their attack from 17,500 feet, facing only the ship's defensive guns. The fire was heavy and accurate, causing the planes to jolt and shake as shells burst around them, while tracer rounds streaked past. The other SBD aimed for a light cruiser, possibly the Isuzu. They attacked from the east, diving out of the sun and encountering no air opposition. At 2,000 feet, the planes released their 500-pound bombs, which accelerated toward their targets. By 1,000 feet, the dive bombers pulled out of their dives, retracted dive brakes, increased throttle, and escaped over the sea. One bomb narrowly missed the Kinugasa, while the Isuzu was struck directly, leaving it heavily smoking. One of the dive bombers was shot down by the anti-aircraft fire. 2 large explosions followed, with the ship's decks sprayed with water and flames erupting from the crater. Isuzu and Kinugasa both slowed, and thick black smoke began pouring from their damaged hull. While these attacks were happening, a larger strike group of 16 SBD Dauntless bombers, escorted by 10 F-4F Wildcats, arrived to engage the Japanese bombardment force. Their mission was to target the main body of enemy cruisers. The bombers maintained formation as they approached, with some pilots exchanging hand signals, while others communicated in code or checked their equipment repeatedly. As the group neared the target, they changed course. But some of the escorting Wildcats missed the turn and continued off course, unable to provide cover for the bombers. By 11:30, the strike group found the main body of 6 Japanese cruisers and 4 destroyers, withdrawing at 25 knots. The cruisers were arranged in 2 parallel columns of 3 ships each. The dauntless bombers began their attack. One section dived on Kinugasa, dropping bombs through intense anti-aircraft fire. A 500-pound bomb dropped by Lieutenant Robert D. Gibson from an SBD struck the forward bridge, penetrating deep into the ship and detonating below the waterline. The explosion caused severe flooding, listing Kinugasa to port by 10 degrees and killing Captain Sawa Masao and his second-in-command. Though emergency counterflooding temporarily stabilized the ship, near misses from additional bombs triggered gasoline tank fires, further disabling the vessel. Another group targeted the Isuzu, scoring 2 direct hits that caused the ship to list to port, with thick black smoke billowing from the hull. The strike leader then led his group to attack the Tenryu, but their bombs landed close without a direct hit. The Isuzu was dead in the water, burning, with 2 destroyers nearby. Other Japanese ships were spread out. Other dauntless pilots circled the main body and selected their targets. The attacks continued as Maya came under fire around 0930, likely targeted by one of the dauntless bombers. Although the bomb missed, the plane clipped the mainmast and crashed, igniting fires that spread rapidly. The crash inflicted damage on a high-angle gun, 2 searchlights, and a torpedo tube, resulting in 37 casualties. Explosions from stored ammunition wrecked several of these portside gun mounts. Meanwhile, Chokai sustained a near miss from a 1,000-pound bomb, which caused minor flooding but no casualties. After the attack, the Dauntlesses regrouped outside the range of enemy guns. Some planes climbed, others glided down, and they formed up in a disciplined formation before heading back to base. Despite efforts to correct her list and extinguish the flames, the Kinugasa was attacked again by 3 dive bombers an hour later. Near misses disabled her engines, and she was eventually abandoned, sinking 15 miles west of Rendova Island, with 51 crew members lost. As the pilots retreated, they watched the heavily damaged Kinugasa roll over and sink, its hull exposed and the surrounding sea littered with debris and oil. In total, 511 sailors were killed, including Captain Sawa and his deputy Fusao Miyazaki. Maya's fires were eventually brought under control, retreating together with Chokai and Suzuya, while the Isuzu was rendered unnavigable by the damage, and although she began to flood, she was towed to the shortlands and later to truck. The Michishio also suffered damage and casualties. Chokai, along with Maya and Suzuya, had reached the shortlands. 2 days later, Chokai departed for Rabaul and ultimately returned to Truk for repairs on November 20th. After further work, she resumed her duties by early December. Similarly, Maya underwent temporary repairs at Kavieng and arrived at Truk on December 8th, later heading for Yokosuka for more extensive repairs, which she completed in early January 1943. The destroyers Yugumo and Cirrus remained behind to rescue the survivors. The bombardment of Henderson Field, while extensive, proved ineffective. However, the urgency to reinforce Guadalcanal remained. The 11 troop transports were scheduled to deliver their cargo that night. Yamamoto resolved to make one final assault on Henderson Field, utilizing Admiral Kondo's strike force main body, now reinforced by Abe's surviving ships. The US Navy was equally determined to thwart both the troop convoy and any further bombardment of Henderson. With accurate air reconnaissance providing clear intelligence on the size, location, and objectives of the Japanese forces, Admiral William Halsey split his forces. Task Force 16, with the Enterprise, stayed to the south, while Task Force 64, under Admiral Lee, was on its way to intercept Kondo and the transports. By 2100, Lee's force, equipped with 2 new battleships and 4 destroyers, was positioned 9 miles west of Guadalcanal, awaiting the Japanese approach. What followed would be the Second Naval Battle of Guadalcanal. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a like, it really helps out the channel. If there is a topic, battle, or person you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and you want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 per month, you will already gain early access to all my videos without any in-video advertisements. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.